What have I actually learned in CRNA school? That's what we're talking about today. My name is David Warren, and if you're new here, consider subscribing for more anesthesia-related content and nurse practitioner content. If you're returning, thank you for watching another video. To give you a little background, I am a nurse practitioner with 8 years of emergency medicine experience. In January of 2022, I started CRNA school. For the past 15 months, I have been toiling away in the didactic-related content of the anesthesia curriculum. I'm at National University in Fresno, California, and in this video, I really want to share with you what have I learned over the past 15 months. This has been by far the most grueling process I have ever been a part of, and I want to share with you today some just lessons that I have learned over the past 15 months, day in and day out, of showing up and being present for my anesthesia training. And this is not anesthesia-related content. These are more life lessons of things that I've learned, things that will help you if you are contemplating going to CRNA school, and really if you're contemplating going to any graduate program. I feel like these concepts play out no matter where you're at, and have certainly played out for me. And before we get into that, today is actually a really special day for me because it is my last day of didactic anesthesia training. In about 3 hours, I have my last simulation final exam, and then I am done. I can't believe how fast it has gone. I've been here in Fresno for 15 months, and today wraps it up. Today is it. After today, I'm done. I'm off to clinical in about a week and a half. I'm going to Henderson, Nevada for that clinical rotation. I'll be there for 12 weeks, and then I'm not sure where I'll be after that, but stay tuned for that journey because that's going to be an interesting journey to document as well. Just to document the fact that today is my last day of didactic training, I'm so excited. I literally cannot contain it because it is finally over. Okay, let's jump into it. So I've written some notes down here, so I'm gonna intermittently look down so I make sure I don't miss any points here. So the first thing that I learned, and the first thing that I feel like everybody learns in anesthesia school, is self-discipline. And that may seem kind of like common sense, but it's really not. Self-discipline in so many ways. By that, I mean, whenever you start your anesthesia training or whatever graduate program you are in, be it nurse practitioner, anesthesia, medical school, PT school, whatever graduate program you are in, you have to learn self-discipline. And that means putting school first. It's really hard to do that sometimes. For me, I remember when I first started, there was just this insurmountable load of stuff that had to be done. I had to listen to lectures, I had to make notes, and then I had to study and like understand and grasp the material. And that was hard because I also wanted to like go out and see California. I've been to California before, but I haven't spent a whole lot of time here. There are a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I had to have self-discipline to be like, you can't do that right now. Like, you literally have to go listen to something about like the skeletal system or, whatever lecture it was for that week or that day. And so having that self-discipline to really like rein yourself in and be like, school is the priority right now, that was challenging for me because prior to this, I was used to living my life, doing whatever I wanted to do. And I'm going to get to that here in a bit on one of the points that we're going to discuss here. You do have to be able to take care of yourself, but more than that, you have to be really self-disciplined to know like when you can do that and when you can't do that. Like if you have 3 lectures that have to be done in the next 2 days, probably not a good idea to go take a vacation and be gone for a few hours. And I say vacation for a few hours. Like in CRNA school, I feel like a vacation is a few hours, obviously not like a week. So you really have to be self-disciplined. Rein yourself in and recognize you're here for a short time. Rein yourself in, focus on the content, and just hammer it out. In CRNA school, you will learn self-discipline if you don't already, because there is always that looming fear of failure, and that is kind of ingrained in us whenever we start, that you mess up, you fail, you're going to be booted out of the program. And so that is real motivation to stick with it and to remain self-disciplined. So that's the first point that I want to hit on and tell you about. The second is patience. Patience. Oh my goodness. I am not a patient person, unfortunately. You can ask pretty much anybody in my life, and that is something that I struggle with. And it really manifests itself in anesthesia training because there are so many new concepts that you will be introduced to. And I feel like it's so interesting looking back now over the past 15 months because I came into this training thinking that I was pretty smart and that I knew some things. But boy, was I wrong. Anesthesia school humbles you so fast because you learn all of these things that you didn't even know you didn't know. And that's the interesting part, is you go in feeling like you're pretty smart, you're accomplished. And I'm coming from a different background. So most of the people going into anesthesia training are ICU nurses, like medical, surgical, cardiovascular, neuro, pediatric, some neonatal. I don't want to miss any ICUs, but you get what I'm saying. Everybody comes in with a similar type background, critical care, nursing. I feel like I came in with a very different background because I was a nurse practitioner. And so I haven't been a bedside nurse in years now. And so I feel like I came in a little bit under the 8 ball per se, because I didn't have that bedside ICU nurse training. I've never worked in the ICU. I have critical care experience. I intubate, I take care of critically ill patients, I put in central lines, art lines, chest tubes, all of the things that happen in the emergency department. And I feel like I knew that really well, but then when I came into this anesthesia training, I was like, wow, I'm really dumb. I don't know anything. And having the patience to be like, you know what, you're starting a new career. You are going to literally be at the bottom on the ground level because you don't know anything. And so it would be no different than if I went to PT school or occupational therapy school. I would literally be at the ground level because I don't know that field. And so having patience with yourself, that whenever you come across those topics that are hard, those topics that are challenging, those topics that you don't know, those topics that it takes 3 times of reading through to even understand what's going on, give yourself some patience and be easy on yourself. And that's something that I really wish I had learned quicker than I did, because I feel like coming in, I still don't have the best patience, but it's something that I need because, like I said, my background is so different. I feel like I came in behind the 8 ball, and I've done fine so far. I've done well, but it's taken some extra work to kind of get up to speed on some of those basic ICU nursing concepts. For me, I can start the art line, but it's been a really long time since I've actually set up the tubing on an art line. And so I had to go over that again for myself, whereas most ICU nurses are like, oh yeah, I could do that the back of my hand. Very easy. And another thing most recently is ventilator waveforms. So looking at the vent, assessing the waveform and really diagnosing what's going on based on that. That's kind of challenging for me because I don't I manage vents temporarily in the emergency department, but it's not like all of my patients are vented for 12 hours at a time and I'm doing that day in and day out. There have been times that I've done that for sure, but it's not an everyday thing. And so learning those vent waveforms and learning those settings and learning what that means for my patient took a little bit of extra work. Whereas maybe for you, if you're an ICU nurse, that's the back of your hand, something you can do very quickly. And maybe you're not. Maybe the RTs do that at your facility. And maybe for your anesthesia training or for preparing for your anesthesia application, you have reviewed that yourself. So those are some real life examples of how I've really had to have some patience with myself, because when I'm reading over a topic, if I don't get it, it's frustrating for me and it makes me want to slam the book shut and throw it away and be I'm done. But you can't do that. You actually have to know the material. And so taking some time to read the text, and if you don't understand it, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go look on YouTube for something to break it down simpler? Are you going to go look at another textbook? Are you going to ask a friend? Are you going to ask your professor? Have some patience, because there are many topics that you're going to go over in your training and you're going to be I don't get that. I don't understand. And you're going to have to find a way to make yourself understand that. And that requires patience. So again, something that I need more of for sure, and something that you probably will need more of too if you're anything like me. So after patience, we kind of hit on this earlier, but self-care. I kind of tied that into the first thing of self-discipline, but self-care is also vitally important in anesthesia school because you're going to be very busy. And there's a whole lot I could say about this. I spent at least anywhere between 6 to 12 hours a day studying most days of the week. Starting in January 2022, we're currently in March. It's March 21st right now. Not sure when this video is going to post, but for reference, March 21st right now. And so from January 2022 to March 2023, average 6 to 12 hours per day in front of the computer most days of the week. Now, there were times that I took the weekend off. I took 3 days off. I took a week off in between, and obviously we had some breaks in between our quarters as well. So I had roughly 3 to 4 weeks of dedicated time off that I would take between classes. So from January 2022 to March 2023, minus 4 weeks, minus some weekends and some intermittent times that I was able to take off. Most days were spent in front of the computer or in the simulation lab or at campus, not slaving away, but learning the anesthesia material. And so that's the reality of the situation, is you're going to be in front of a computer screen or in front of a textbook or in front of a lecture, grinding it out most days of the week for hours on end. And that's actually what's going to happen. And I didn't really believe that coming in, but that's it. And so you have to be willing to care for yourself in those times. And it's very easy, especially for me, to try to grind it out days on end without taking a break. That's my nature. And it didn't work well for me initially. I almost burned myself out in the first couple months. My girlfriend is here in California with me as well. And thankfully, she was able to pull me away and say, hey, we're gonna go on a trip this weekend, or we're gonna go here this weekend, or take a few hours and let's go do something. Let's go have coffee or go have dinner. And that really grounded me, because I feel if I didn't have somebody to do that, I would just be lost. I would be here in front of the computer like a little hobbit, slaving away for hours on end, not caring, and all day, every day. And I would burn myself out so quickly. I know myself. And so having that person to ground you, and if you don't have that person, if you're single, or if you don't have a great support system, you have to be willing to do that for yourself. You have to be willing to do that self-care that is so needed. So do the self-care, even if it's just a few hours a day. Get out, take a walk, go for a run, go to the gym. Now, I'm not saying spend half the day not studying. That's not feasible, but take 30 minutes, take an hour, take a couple hours, take the weekend off. You need that self-care time. And this kind of leads me into my next point. To be able to do that, you need good organization. And I feel that's something that I had a pretty good grasp on coming into the program. I'm very, to the point of probably not being healthy, organized. Everything is very organized. I'm very clean, very tidy. Everything has its place. If something is misplaced, it doesn't usually go well. Things have to be in their proper location. And so organization really helped me succeed, because everything had its place. And so that really looked like having a planner and writing everything down. That's how I stayed organized in anesthesia training for the past year. So for the first year, January through December, I had a paper calendar, and I literally wrote, color-coded, of course. I'm not an ICU nurse, but I feel I'm an ICU nurse at heart, because I'm very organized. So I would color code everything, have everything written down, and that's how I stayed organized. Since December, we're in March now. So for the past 3 months, starting in January of 2023, I went to an online-based calendar. Use Google Calendar. Much easier. I can get it from my phone. I'm not worried about dragging my planner around or having the proper color to write in the date or whatever. So it's just easier to have the online thing, Google Calendar. I used that before I got into anesthesia training. I just thought the paper calendar would work fine, and it did. If you like paper calendars, it will be fine. It's just you're probably not as OCD as I am about everything having their particular color. If you are, you might consider Google Calendar, because it's hard to tote around 10 different colors in your backpack, or whatever, fanny pack, or whatever you're wearing. I don't know if anybody wears fanny packs nowadays or not. It brought me back to my childhood in SeaWorld 1990s. My mom wearing a fanny pack. Another story for another time. Organization. We're not going to get off topic here. Organization. So stay organized. Use a planner. That's the biggest advice I can give you. On your computer, organize your files, have folders for things. It just makes your life so much easier to do that. Also, notability. This is not the video to go over all the things you need for CRNA training, but notability is good. It allows you to organize everything you need. So I would highly suggest notability. Organization, though, is really the overlying key point that I wanted to get across to you. The next one is reliance on others. Reliance on others. And that's an interesting one as well, because I didn't really see that going into my training. But I will say I have relied so much on other members of my cohort. It has been unbelievable how important of a role they have played in my training and really in my life, because our cohort, the cohort that I'm in at National, is so tight-knit and so close. Whenever we started the program, we all started a Google Drive, or I say we all, like one person started a Google Drive for the entire cohort, and we would upload everything, all of our notes, everything was shared. We would upload everything to that Google Drive. We had one set of notes, and we would basically import the PowerPoint bullet points into a Google document, and then we would transcribe the lecture for whatever lecture we were listening to into that document, and we would bring in some Apex and some Prodigy and all those like anesthesia things from the textbook that were important. And so everybody would contribute to that, which was super helpful. Like, if I didn't have my other cohort members helping out with that section of notes, there's no way it could have been done. And I know every program doesn't do that. I just can't imagine being in a program where I'm responsible for doing everything myself. Like with this program, there's no way it would happen. There's not enough time in the day to be able to go through all those notes and to really understand it. So relying on other members of your cohort. And that's going to look different for everybody. Like maybe you're in a program where you have study groups. Like for me personally, I prefer to study alone. Like I don't do well in study groups, especially like big study groups. I get overwhelmed and I'm like, I can't do this. Like I got to go. Maybe smaller study groups would work, but people in our cohort, like we tended to do independent study. We would all contribute to our notes on the Google Drive, and then everybody would kind of do their own thing. And so I relied on others maybe in a different way than you would rely on others. Maybe your reliance on others is going to a small study group and everybody coming prepared to like talk it through and to understand the concept. And that's fine. You're certainly relying on others to do that. For my reliance on others, it was more of everybody's contributing to the notes, everybody's transcribing a piece of the lecture. So, within a 2-day time frame, we have a fully drafted set of notes ready to study for the exam. And so that's how I relied on others. And again, I know every program isn't that tight-knit, and not every program has a Google Drive and contributes like we did. I personally think it's the best way, and that's the only way I've ever done it. So maybe your way's better. I don't know. I'm just kind of giving you my experience. You do have to rely on others, though, whether it be for a study group, whether it be for learning simulation skills, practicing with each other. And that's another point whenever you start doing simulation lab. Going to the lab with another person is super helpful, because at least in our program, we have like a modified vital machine, like a monitor, and somebody has to run that monitor from their phone. So if you're going through like intraoperative hypotension, and they can, the other person can manipulate the vital signs while you're going through your case and giving your pressors and trying to get the blood pressure up. Somebody else is manipulating that machine. It would be kind of hard to do that yourself. You can do it, but it helps to have somebody else, like a second party or a third party there doing that, manipulating that machine for you while you're going through the scenario. So relying on others is huge as well. Okay, last point. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And that's kind of the point I want to end on. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable, because there are going to be many times that you are uncomfortable in your CRNA training. And I'm not like talking about uncomfortable in like a weird way, but like uncomfortable as being outside of your comfort zone, being able to try something that you haven't tried before and something that you are completely not good at and a novice at. And you have to be comfortable doing that. So I remember in simulation lab, like in my prior emergency medicine career, like I've intubated, I've done RSIs, and I've used video laryngoscopes, and like I've managed all those things that you would think would help me out in my anesthesia training. And I'm sure it probably will help me out, but doing that like with the anesthesia machine, and it's just different. And I had to learn to be uncomfortable doing that. Like, sure, I've intubated before, but it's different when you're intubating and the anesthesia machine is right here and the bag is right here, and you have to manipulate the APL valve, and you have to draw up your own drugs and push your own drugs and hold your own ET tube while you're intubating and pull your own stylet, like all the things. It's just different, and you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I think that's even more so true with people that don't have an advanced practice background. And so like myself, like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of intubation and putting in invasive lines, all those things before I started the program. I've learned a whole lot more since being in the program, but I feel like I came in with a good knowledge of how to do that before. And so I can imagine like being an ICU nurse who's never intubated before, and then being in that situation and having to learn intubation and having to learn all the things. Like, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. There are going to be many times that like in simulation lab, we have like small groups of about 10 to 12 people, and our simulation instructor would just like call somebody to the front, to the head of the bed in front of everybody and be like, okay, here's your case. You have a 100-kilo male, he's coming in for X, Y, and Z. Go. Like, what's your induction plan? You have to be willing to say, okay, I'm gonna give like 150 of fentanyl, I'm gonna give 100 of lidocaine, I'll give 200 of propofol, I'll give like 170 to 100 of rock, and I'm going to use general anesthesia, sevoflurane, 1.5 MAC, all the things that go with putting a plan into place for anesthesia, doing that on the spot in front of like the entire class. And that's uncomfortable, literally uncomfortable for anybody in that situation. Your heart's like racing, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So be okay with being uncomfortable is kind of what I get at. And those are just a few of the situations of where you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. There are many more scenarios that I could give you of where you have to be okay with that type of thing, of being uncomfortable. And those are just some examples of kind of what I have been through. So those are my tips for you. So to recap, self-discipline, learn self-discipline. If you don't learn self-discipline, you will be taught self-discipline in anesthesia school, or you will probably fail out. The second is patience. Have patience with yourself, especially learning new material. Like, you're not going to get it the first time around. Be patient with yourself. Practice self-care daily self-care. If it's a few minutes, an hour, take the weekend, practice self-care. It's vitally important. Organization, using apps like Notability, keeping things organized via calendar. Stay organized. Reliance on others. Obviously, you're going to be relying on other members of your cohort, and be okay with being uncomfortable. Those are probably the most important things I have learned in anesthesia school that aren't anesthesia related. So comment below if you are a current SRNA or if you're a CRNA. What did you learn in your anesthesia training, or what are you learning now? What kind of life lessons have you learned that you feel like would be beneficial to somebody else? Put those below. I would love to read them. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have other video related topics that you would like for me to discuss, comment those below as well. I'm always looking for video ideas, and sometimes my video ideas don't always line up with your wants and what you're looking for. So comment below if there's something particular you want me to talk about. I would love to do it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time, and the next time I will be done with my didactic training of CRNA school.